There are things that happen inside Old Order Amish communities that are never spoken about at Sunday service, never mentioned at the quilting gatherings or the barn raisings or the long communal meals that follow a wedding. They exist in the space between what the community presents to the outside world and what actually lives inside the walls of its households. I know these things not because I read about them. I know them because I grew up inside one, because I sat in those silences, because I understood from a very early age which questions were never going to be answered and why. My name is Ruth. I am 31 years old, and tonight I am going to tell you the things that Old Order communities never talk about. I want to begin by saying something that I think matters before anything else. The community I grew up in Ohio was not a place of simple darkness. It was a place of genuine faith, genuine love, genuine beauty. The people inside it were not monsters. They were people who believed deeply and sincerely that the life they were building was the right one, the faithful one, the one that led where a life was supposed to lead. I hold that complexity in everything I am about to tell you. Because the hardest truths are not the ones about evil people doing evil things. The hardest truths are about good people, inside imperfect systems, producing outcomes that nobody fully intended and nobody fully acknowledged. That is what I want to talk about tonight. The first secret is about what happens when someone wants to leave. In theory, the Amish faith is voluntary. A person is not baptized as an infant. Baptism happens in adulthood, after a period of instruction, as a conscious choice. This is one of the things that distinguishes Anabaptist faith from other Christian traditions, and that the community points to as evidence of genuine individual commitment. You chose this. Nobody forced you. But the reality of that choice is more complicated than it appears from the outside. Because by the time a young person reaches the age of baptism, typically in their late teens or early 20s, the entire architecture of their life has been built inside the community. Their family is there. Their friendships, every one of them, are there. Their skills, their knowledge, their understanding of how the world works. All of it has been shaped by and for a life inside those boundaries. The world outside is not just unfamiliar. It has been actively described, from childhood, as dangerous, as spiritually ruinous, as a place where people lose themselves. So when the moment of baptismal choice arrives, it is not a free choice in the way the word free usually means. It is a choice made by a person standing inside a world that was built to make one answer feel like the only possible answer. The cost of saying no is not just spiritual. It is total. It is your family, your community, your entire social world, and in many cases, your practical ability to function. Because if you have never used electricity, never driven a car, never navigated the systems of the outside world, leaving is not just emotionally devastating. It is practically terrifying. And if you do leave after baptism, then comes the meidung, the shunning, the formal, community-wide act of separation that cuts you off from every relationship you have ever had. Your parents, your siblings, your childhood friends, the people who delivered your children and sat with you through illness and prayed over your losses, all of it gone, not because they stopped loving you, but because the community requires the separation as the cost of leaving, as the proof that the boundaries are real. I have watched this happen. I have watched families sit at tables with empty chairs. I have watched mothers learn to look past their own children in public spaces. And I have watched those children on the outside, building new lives, carrying a grief that the outside world has no category for. The grief of people who are not dead, but are gone in every way that matters. That is the first secret. The choice to stay is not as free as it is presented to be. The second secret is about conflict. From the outside, Amish communities look remarkably peaceful, and in many ways they are. The absence of certain technologies removes entire categories of modern stress. The communal support system means that no one faces crisis entirely alone. The shared faith and shared values create a coherence that many people in the fragmented outside world find genuinely beautiful. But conflict does not disappear because it is not permitted to exist visibly. It goes somewhere else. It goes underground, into the spaces between people that the community's structures cannot fully reach. It lives in the silences of households where disagreement is not allowed to be spoken. It lives in the accumulated resentments of people who have been told, consistently and from childhood, that putting your own needs and feelings forward is a form of pride, of hochmut, and that the faithful response to difficulty is surrender rather than expression. Disputes between neighbors in a tight Amish community cannot be taken to outside courts. The Ordnung forbids legal action between members. They must be resolved internally, through the church structure, through the bishop and the deacons. This is meant to preserve community integrity. What it also does is concentrate the power of resolution in the hands of the same small group of men who hold authority over every other aspect of community life. If your dispute is with one of those men, or with someone they favor, your options for resolution are very limited. I knew families in our district who carried unresolved conflicts for decades. Wounds that never healed because the only sanctioned path to healing ran through a structure that had its own interests in the outcome. Wounds that got passed down, from parents to children, quietly, in the way of things that are felt but never named. The third secret is about the young people, Rumspringa, the period before baptism when young people are allowed some degree of freedom to experience the outside world, is often described to outsiders as a genuine opportunity for choice. A chance to see what else is out there before committing to the community. And for some young people in some districts, it genuinely is that. But in more conservative Old Order communities, it is something different. It is a managed, watched, implicitly pressured period that most young people understand is expected to end in one particular way. The freedom of Rumspringa is real, but it is surrounded by invisible walls. The knowledge that the people watching you love you and are waiting for you to come back. The understanding that staying out means losing them. The lack of practical tools to survive in a world you have been prepared for your entire life to be unable to navigate. The young people who do come back from Rumspringa and choose baptism, many of them are making a genuine choice and making it with full hearts. I believe that. I also believe that for a significant number of them, the choice is made not from full freedom but from the impossibility of the alternative. From the weight of everything that would be lost. From the love that functions, in this particular way, as a form of gravity. And the young people who do not come back carry something that is hard to name. Not just the grief of separation, but a particular kind of confusion about themselves, about what they believe, about who they are outside the identity that was given to them, about how to build a self from scratch when the self you were given belonged to a world you are no longer inside. The fourth secret is about the weight of perfection. In Old Order communities, the ideal of the yielded self, Gelassen, the surrendered, humble, community-first life, is the standard against which every member measures themselves. This is presented as freedom from the exhausting self-focus of modern life. And there is truth in that. The absence of certain kinds of pressure, the pressure to distinguish yourself, to accumulate, to be seen, creates a genuine lightness that people who have left sometimes find themselves missing. But the standard of Gelassen is also for many people an impossible one, because inside every human being, regardless of what faith they were raised in, there is a self that has needs and desires and questions and feelings that are not always oriented toward the community's good. And in a world where expressing those things is understood as spiritual failure, they do not disappear. They become secrets. They become the things you carry without saying. They become the gap between the faithful person you present to the world every Sunday and the complicated, struggling, genuinely human person you actually are. I think about this when I think about the community I grew up in, about all the people I knew who were good and faithful and genuinely trying, and also, underneath all of that, quietly exhausted by the distance between who they were supposed to be and who they actually were. The exhaustion was real. The faith was also real. Both things were true at the same time. That complexity is the thing that is hardest to hold and most important to acknowledge. I am not telling you these things tonight to condemn the community I came from. The people there are real people, fully human, doing their best inside a system that gives them certain things and costs them certain things, the way every human system does. I am telling you because I think the truth of what life inside those walls actually looks like. Not the idealized version and not the sensationalized version, but the real, complicated, both things are true version, deserves to be spoken. And I am telling you because I think the questions it raises are not only questions about Amish life. They are questions about every community, every family, every faith tradition, every group of people who have ever tried to build a way of living together. How much of yourself do you surrender for belonging? What happens to the things you cannot say? Who holds the power of resolution when something goes wrong? And is the choice you made to be here, wherever here is for you, as free as you believe it to be? I do not have clean answers to any of those questions. I have lived experience. I have the weight of it. And I have the belief, hard won and still being tested, that honest questions are worth more than comfortable silence. That is what I know. That is what I am telling you tonight.